and we are doing our pelvic floor flow today. So you may need a TheraBand just if you've not got great flexibility in your hamstrings. So grab one of those and then we'll get started. Okay, so come and lie on your backs. Right, so as usual, we're going to work on our connection, posture and breath. So we're going to get our feet hip distance apart, and where we should be feeling connected is underneath both our feet, underneath the lumbosacral junction, TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. So we're going to start our feet, and we should be feeling nice and balanced between the right and left foot. So if you can just start to shift the weight from side to side until you feel like you've got more connection equally underneath both feet. And then you're going to think about where you're feeling it on the foot. Are you feeling it on the inside or the outside of the foot? If you're feeling it more to the outside of the foot, I want you to keep your knees pointing towards the ceiling, and I want you to try and bring that inner arch down by pushing the big toe into the floor, but try and keep the outer arch on the floor at the same time. If you're feeling it more on the inner arch, you're going to do the reverse. You're going to try and bring the outer arch down to the floor, keeping the knees pointed to the ceiling, but trying to keep that big toe in connection with the floor so we're not lifting that inner arch off the floor. And I want you to try and keep that connection with the big toe throughout. Then we're going to work our way up to the lumbosacral junction. So we're going to start by peeling the spine away from the floor, and the lower back's going to lift into extension, and the pelvis is going to go forwards into an anterior tilt. And then we're going to reverse peel, so the pelvis is going posterior, and the spine's going to round into the floor. And then we're just going to alternate between anterior tilt and posterior tilt. So forwards, backwards, lumbar extension, lumbar flexion. And then I want you to pause in the midpoint between the two end ranges. Your lower back should be flat on the floor, and your lumbosacral junction will feel more connected with the floor. Then we're going to work our way up to the TL junction. So think of your ribcage and pelvis like the pages of a book. We want the pages to be closed. We don't want the ribs to be flared. We don't want any lumbar extension. So we're going to pull the pages close so that they're parallel with each other. Have a little feel of what's happening in your ribs. So if you feel like your ribs, lower ribs are lifting up towards the ceiling, just try and bring them down towards your pelvis, like you're closing those pages, and your TL junction should get better connected then. Then work your way to your shoulder blades. So again, they want to be equal from side to side, so just shift the weight about until you get more balanced. And then the shoulders themselves, they want to be neutral, so try not to let your shoulders come forwards into this anterior position. We're going to bring them back slightly. Don't pin the shoulder blade towards the floor. Just bring them back slightly, externally rotate and depress. So try and bring your shoulder blades down towards your back pocket. And you should feel the muscles underneath the shoulder, around the back, start to work. And then once you've done that, you're going to go to the head. So the back of the head is going to push straight back towards the floor. Don't let your neck extend and don't let it flex forwards. So it's going straight back down, eyes pointing towards the ceiling. Okay, so now we've got connection, we're going to work on our breath and put one hand on the chest, one hand on the tummy, and we're just going to get the breath in the right order first of all. So as you breathe in, the hand on the tummy is going to lift and then as you breathe out, the hand on the tummy is going to lower. So like I said, this flow is all about the pelvic floor. So when we take a breath in, as the diaphragm descends, the pelvic floor is going to go in the same direction as your diaphragm. So if you think about your diaphragm pushing down towards your feet at the moment, because obviously we're laying on our backs, so they're going sort of horizontally towards our feet. Try and think of the pelvic floor going in the same direction. Hand on the chest, doesn't want to move anywhere. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, through pursed lips like you're blowing through a straw. Just do a couple more breaths. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to put your hands around your waist, and we want to now try and create our 360-degree breath. So that's that outward expansion of all the abdominal wall muscles, and at the same time as we're breathing in and expanding those abdominal wall muscles, again we're going to think about the pelvic floor shifting horizontally towards our feet. And then on the breath out, what I want you to do is think about actively relaxing the pelvic floor, if that makes sense. So we're going to think about just lifting slightly, so you don't want to completely contract the pelvic floor upwards. It's about 30 to 50% we're going to think about lifting the pelvic floor. So it's a gentle contraction upwards. It's like a relaxation of the pelvic floor from the opposite direction it was before, but it's not a complete suck up. So we're going to expand. So breathe 360. So try and think about those muscles in the abdominal wall expanding outwards. And at the same time, think about the pelvic floor shifting down towards the feet. And then on the breath out, let the muscles relax, and then think about lifting the pelvic floor about 30 to 50%. And then breathe in, feel that expansion. So it's a gentle lift, you're not contracting all the way up. Gentle lift on the breath out. So on the breath in, what you want to try and do is imagine that feeling like when you're about to go for a wee. So when you're about to go for a wee, you kind of push your pelvic floor down towards your feet again. So try and create that feeling. And then gentle lift on the breath out. So I'm just going to go back to the abdominal wall a second to make sure we're doing this right. So we want to feel this equal from front to back and from side to side. So if you're struggling to feel that, just cough. Feel that expansion. And then on the breath in, try and think about all those muscles lifting and expanding into your hands. And the pelvic floor shifting down towards your feet at the same time. And then let the muscles relax, and then try and lift the pelvic floor slightly. If you're struggling with any of the areas in your abdominal wall, focus on that part. So focus, like mine's the right side, I'm just going to focus on that right side, give it a squeeze, give it a prod. And think about that expansion, pushing your hands away, front, back and sides equally at the same time. Okay, so once we've got our 360 breath and we've got that feeling down in the pelvic floor, like we're trying to go for a wee on the breath in, and then that gentle lift on the breath out. We're now going to try and create our brace. So we're going to create our 360-degree breath, and then before we take the breath out, we're just going to create that outward expansion like we're imagining that we're about to fart. So create that 360 breath, create that outward expansion, and then don't let the muscles completely relax as we're breathing out. So we need to be able to keep this brace when we're doing things that need more stabilisation, and the amount of brace that you're going to need depends on what you are doing. So if you're doing something that needs more stabilisation, you're going to need to be able to create more of a brace. So you need to be able to kind of create a 50% brace and a 100% brace depending on what you're doing. So keep bracing and breathing at the same time. Keep those muscles active as you're breathing out. Creating a nice smooth cylinder around the abdominal wall, so try not to tense those muscles. Okay, so we're going to just start by just doing some double leg lifts. So we need to be able to create this 360 breath, and then we need to create the brace, and we're just going to lift the legs up into the air and then slowly lower back down. And I really want you to concentrate on your breath and feeling the pelvic floor go horizontally, and then a gentle lift on the breath out as you're lifting and lowering the legs. So nice, slow and controlled, really focusing on your breath, focusing on your 360 and focusing on your pelvic floor. Try not to let the pelvis tilt forwards as you lift the legs and as you lower. So we're keeping that nice neutral spine and neutral pelvis. And try not to let the neck extend. So we're keeping the head neutral by pushing the head down towards the floor. So remember, pelvic floor shifts downwards in the same direction as the diaphragm on the breath in, and then a gentle lift as you breathe out. And then we're just going to stop in the 3-month supine position. So if you need to, if you can't hold this position if your back's sore, pop your legs up onto a ball or on the sofa or a chair. So 3-month supine, your feet are neutral, your feet are higher than your knees over your hips, hips externally rotated and abducted. And we're just going to try and hold this position. And we're just breathing 360, pelvic floor is going in the same direction direction as the diaphragm, so horizontally, and then a gentle lift on the breath out. So really honing in on the breath on this flow. We're really focusing on what's happening with our breath. Just do 2 more breaths. Bring your knees into your chest, just give your hip flexors a little rest. And then I want you to grab hold of your feet. So this is where you might need your TheraBand, so you can put it around the bottom of your feet. And then hold on to the TheraBand with both hands. But if you can, grab hold of your feet up towards the ceiling. Make sure your head stays neutral. And keep the shoulders active as well, try not to let the shoulders come forwards. And then again, we're focusing on our breath, so 360 breath. This time your pelvic floor is going to be kind of going up towards the ceiling. And that gentle relaxation or gentle lift as you breathe out. Keep breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, through your pursed lips. Just do a couple more breaths. Bring your legs back down into your 3-month supine. And then we're just going to go into our roll, and it's going to be very, very slow and controlled. Again, focusing on the breath and focusing on that pelvic floor, shifting downwards, and then gentle lift on the breath out. So fingertips towards the ceiling. You're going to lift your head slightly, look to the direction you're going to turn, and we're going to start to roll onto our side. Keep the knees separated, don't let them come together. So they're staying in exactly the same position as on your back, and then slowly roll to the opposite direction. And we want to keep that Lego body, so shoulders and pelvis are moving at the same time. And the spine stays nice and straight, so we're not collapsing into that banana. And we're just focusing on the breath. Creating your 360 breath and that pelvic floor shifting downwards when you breathe in. And that gentle lift on the breath out. Slow and controlled, don't let your body flop to the side and don't just throw yourself back. And then we're just going to do 1 more each side. And then come up into a low oblique sit. So keep your legs in this mermaid position, and the forearm is going to be pushing down into the floor. Keep your shoulder active. And then what I want you to do is just lift your bum off the floor. And we're just going to hold this position And think about the breath. So we want a nice straight spine as well, so we're not collapsing, and we want the shoulder active. And just focusing on our breath. So 360, pelvic floor is kind of going in a diagonal direction now. And the gentle lift on the breath out. So 30 to 50% of your maximal contraction. Just try and do one more breath. Lower your hip down. Come up into your high oblique sit. So hand flat on the floor, still in this mermaid position. And then again, we're going to lift the pelvis off the floor. Keep the shoulder active. And we're just breathing, focusing on our 360 breath. Just hold this position. So again, pelvic floor is going in a diagonal sort of direction, but a little bit more vertical than it was before. And that gentle lift on the breath out. Just try and do one more breath. Lower back down. And then we're just going to go from this high oblique sit, and we're going to slowly bring the leg round into a tripod position. And then slowly take that leg back round into our oblique sit. So it's a really slow movement up into tripod and back down to oblique sit. Again, focusing on the breath, focusing on the pelvic floor. So just in your own time, just slowly up from the oblique sit into your tripod and back down. And focus on your breath. Just do a couple more. And then we're just going to lift up into our tripod. Put your hands flat on the floor, both of them. And try and lengthen through the spine now. So what you don't want to do is be all curled like this. So we want to try and pull that spine towards the floor. And you're just going to hold this position. And again, focus on your breath. So create your 360 breath, and your pelvic floor kind of going a diagonal way towards the floor again. So gentle lift on the breath out, 30 to 50%. And then I want you to start hinging your hips backwards now. So we're just taking the bum back slowly. And then come back up. And again, just breathe. 360 on the breath in. Pelvic floor going towards the floor. And a gentle lift on the breath out. And you'll feel a nice stretch down that front leg. So just going back and forwards. And as well, at the same time, think about that front foot connection. So think about trying to push that big toe down into the floor and keep the outer arch, the outer part of the foot on the floor as well. So if you're pushing your big toe towards the floor, you'll feel that inner arch working really hard. And then come up into your high kneel, pelvis level with the floor, foot out to the side so we're not too narrow here, and again, big toe contacting the floor, focus on our breath and then hinge the hips backwards. Slowly down, so you only have to go as far as you can, so you don't have to feel like you have to go all the way. You can just pause here if you want to and just do this range of movement. Again, focusing on our breath, so really nice and slow and controlled. Keep pushing that big toe down towards the floor. Every breath you take, think about your pelvic floor, shifting downwards now towards the floor when you're up in the high kneel, and then it will sort of work its way a bit more diagonal as you're going backwards. And you can just pause in that bottom position if you want to and just hold it there. Feel that stretch down that front leg. And really think about that expansion. And then come up into your full high kneel. So again, pelvis level with the floor. Get that big toe connection. And we're just going to pause here a second and just focus on the breath. So now pelvic floor is going to be going right down towards the floor. And then gentle lift upwards as we breathe out. And you should hopefully start to feel that glute really working hard. If your pelvis is in the right position, neutral pelvis, pelvis level with the floor, you're not wonking anywhere. Like my right glute is on fire right now. Curl your back foot under, and then we're going to slowly lift up. Try and keep the knee tracking the second and third toe. And then take that leg back. And slowly lower down, really focusing on your breath. And just in your own time now, just high kneel to stand. Really controlling that movement with your breath, with your brace. Try and make sure your pelvis doesn't shoot out to the side when you're standing up and when you're lowering back down. In the standing position as well, focus on your breath coming down into your pelvic floor. Just do last one. And then down into that high kneel. And we're going to rotate now from this side to the opposite high kneel. Really slow. So we can really concentrate on the breath and the pelvic floor shifting downwards, and then rotate the opposite way, and then lift and slowly go the other way. Gentle lift on the breath out. Finish on the opposite side. And then we're going to do some tripod hinges. So hands flat on the floor, make sure the big toe is pressing into the floor. And we're just going to hinge backwards. So, one foot forwards, the other leg back. Back nice and long, and then hinge backwards. So it's the opposite side to the side you were doing before. Focusing on our breath. And trying to keep nice and long in the spine. Try not to let yourself round. Just pause in that bottom position if you want to. Just feel that stretch around that front leg. Come up into your high kneel. Pelvis level, foot to the side. We're going to do some hinging. Big toe contacting the floor, so push that big toe into the floor. Keep that inner arch active. 360 breath. Pelvic floor shifting to the floor on the breath in now. Pause in the bottom position again. Feel that breath, feel the pelvic floor shift downwards. And then gentle lift on the breath out. Up into your high kneel. And then again we're going to just do some high kneel to stand. Big toe pressing into the floor. And lift. Slowly lower down. Focus on your breath. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Try not to take your leg too narrow on the way back down, because if you go too narrow, you're just going to end up collapsing on yourself. So a little bit wider. Just do a couple more. Really focus on that knee, tracking the second and third toe. Okay, so now we go back down into our high kneel. Pop the hand on the floor again. And we're just going to bring that front leg back into our oblique sit. And then bring it back up into our tripod. So in your own time, just a bit of moving through these movements from oblique sit into tripod. Focusing on your breath. So really slow as you go, and slow round. Just do one more of those. And then come down, or actually stay on your high oblique sit. And then you're just going to lift your bum off the floor. And we're just going to hold this position and breathe. So 360 breath in, pelvic floor is going diagonal, gentle 30 to 50% lift on the breath out. Nice, keep the shoulders active, keep the spine nice and straight. Come down into low oblique sit. Again, lift the pelvis off the floor and just hold. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips. Just a couple more breaths. Down. Come up into your high oblique sit. Take the back leg forwards. And we're just going to lift the bum off the floor and then twizzle round into our bear, into our quadruped, then down into low quadruped. And we're just going to find our neutral spine and try and bring the upper back into a nice long position. So whether that's bringing it down towards the floor if you're rounded, or if you need to push the floor away and spread the shoulder blades out if you're a bit more flat through your upper back. Focus on your breath. So think about your pelvic floor again. So breath in now, it's going to be going horizontally again. And then I want you to start to shift your hips backwards, so you're folding your hips. So we're flexing the hip, keeping that lower back neutral. And you're going to go back as far as you can, keeping that lower back neutral. And just hold that position and breathe. And you'll feel your pelvic floor more because it's being stretched out now. So remember that gentle lift on the breath out. And then come out of that position, keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Don't let the lower back extend as you're coming out of that position. Don't let the pelvis tilt forwards. You're just going to go back one more time. So we're flexing the hip again, keeping that neutral position, right back into that far position, and think about your breath. And then start to come out of that position, keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral spine. Come up onto your hands into quadruped. Again, find your neutral. And then we're just going to hinge backwards, slowly. So flexing the hip, keeping that lower back neutral, keeping that length through the upper back. Make sure your head doesn't go into extension. And just focus on your breath, creating your 360 breath, and your pelvic floor going more towards the floor again on the breath in, and the gentle lift on the breath out. And then come out of it, keeping that neutral position. And then slowly go back again. And breathe. Slowly come out of it. And then I want you to curl your back feet under. So we're really nearly done now, but if anyone needs to get going, then no worries. We've only got a couple more minutes left, I'd say. So create your 360 breath, and now you're going to have to create your brace, because we're going to lift the knees off the floor, and we want to make sure that the pelvis doesn't tilt forwards. And you're just going to hold this position for a second, thinking about your breath. Keep pushing the floor away, keep the neck nice and long. And then I want you to start to flex the hips backwards. Your bum's going to go more into the air. Very nice. Hold this position. So your pelvic floor is now going to be going more towards the ceiling. So you're going to breathe. Feel your pelvic floor shift towards the ceiling a little bit more, and then gentle relaxation or gentle lift on the breath out. Okay, just come out of that position, down into the quadruped set. Just give your legs a little shake off before we go into the squat. So find your neutral, create your breath and your brace, lift your knees off the floor again, shift your hips backwards into your high bear, start to walk your hands backwards into your squat, and we're just going to hold that squat position. And we're just going to think about our pelvic floor again, going down towards the floor. And then gentle lift as we breathe out. Try and keep nice and long through your spine. Try and do one more breath, and then we're going to stand. And then come up, keeping that pelvis neutral. And then just try and just do a couple of squats now, keeping your neutral pelvis, focusing on your breath, and then we'll be done. So create your breath and your brace, and then slowly down, keeping control of your pelvis and lower back. Keep nice and long through the upper back. Pause a second at the bottom if you want to, so to focus on your breath. And then slowly lift up. Do a couple more of these. Okay. Last one. Control it. And